She raised the largest seed round in South Africa as a female founder working on solving the student housing crisis globally.
When I started, it wasn't supposed to be a business. It literally was just a website, so I'd never even crossed my mind to monetize it.
She shares what it's like as a female founder seeking a small amount of money, only to receive a term sheet that was 6 times the amount she was actually looking for.
I remember when we got the phone call and Greg and I looked at each other and we were like, 12 million? Like, what? That is crazy.
And how she was able to get to profitability, being able to source and recruit affordable talent in South Africa.
Engineers, you're looking maybe around a month. I really would advocate for the hiring talent there.
Making me want to consider hiring in South Africa for top talent at affordable rates. So maybe you will too after watching this episode. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Fundraising Demystified. Today we have Alexandria Procter with us, founder of DigsConnect out of South Africa. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Jason. It is lovely to see you again. It's good to be here.
No, that's great. We met at lunch not too long ago. I was fascinated by your story of being, the female founder out of South Africa that raised the largest seed round. Fascinating story. I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit more about what you built at DigsConnect, how you grew to 400 cities, and just give the audience a little bit of context to who you are.
So I started my company when I was a student at the University of Cape Town. It was a lot of things kind of fall into place. I never quite planned. I never planned to be an entrepreneur, never planned to be a founder. This was back in 2018. So it wasn't, we have now our startup scene is incredible. It's growing really fast. There's a whole lot of movements around it. But back then it wasn't a big thing. There was a couple, starters. It wasn't like this kind of seen as almost like, I'd say almost a viable career path being a startup founder. So how it all happened was that I was elected to student government in my third year at university. And my portfolio was called the Student Housing Coordinator. And that's basically every student that wasn't in university issued accommodation to find a place to stay off campus. And UCT, there's about 30,000 students and only 5,000 beds on campus. And so the vast majority of students had to find accommodation off campus, but there's no plan B. If you're not in res, you're on your own in a way. And the university solution to this was to have literally a printed out piece of paper, like an A4 sheet with names and numbers. And that's it. In 2018, 2017, that was their solution. And so because it was my responsibility to kind of work on this, I had been doing comp sci for a year as part of my science degree. I could knock together a really basic website literally over a weekend. And that was it. That was DigsConnect's version 1. The word Digs in South Africa means a commune, a student commune. It's kind of used also in a lot of the Commonwealth countries. I don't know if it's very common in America, but that's the word it came from. And then DigsConnect flowed from there. Also, I remember when I first started speaking about the name in an SRC, the Student Representative Council meeting, because I speak quite fast. I was like, oh, guys, I've launched a website called DigsConnect. And everyone misheard it. And I was like, wait, what are you launching? DigsConnect. And I was like, no, it's a DigsConnect.
Keep it PG with Digs, D-I-G.
Yeah, exactly. So launched that, and again, it's just to solve a problem that I was facing on the SRC, just to solve the campus-wide problem. But it's interesting how I think so often we are a product of context. It's kind of the wider context happening in the world around us. And at that time in South Africa, there were a series of protests, nationwide protests called EP64, and there was one called Shackville. And that was focused on the fact that there was no student housing. And it was every year in January when students back to campus, there would be this, front page of the newspaper, students are homeless, students are sleeping in lecture theatres, nowhere for them to go. And of the 2.3 million students in South Africa, 800,000 are funded by government because they fall beneath what's considered to be almost as an international poverty line in a way. And they really need that funding, they really need that support. And these are the most vulnerable students who need, the most secure accommodation, good living experiences to break those poverty cycles, to get their qualification, to join the workforce. And they're living in really abysmal locations that are just being taken advantage of by landlords. And so it's quite a dire situation. But on the other side, you have the South African private sector, which I would argue is one of the best in the world. I would say South African entrepreneurs are incredible because they work under very difficult circumstances. And normal South Africans have been going out and buying flats and houses. And even we have a burgeoning PBSA, which is purpose-built student accommodation sector. And these landlords have, a mortgage to pay first of the month. The bank's taking their money whether you like it or not. So they're going to get tenants in paying that rent. And so there really was, from both sides, this need to really connect. But back then I didn't know any of this. I wasn't thinking about market dynamics. I wasn't thinking about the burgeoning PBSA sector. I was just like, I've got a queue of students at my door looking for a place to stay. I know there's properties around campus. Let me just check it on a website. It was literally just that. Built it over a weekend. It was hideous, but it did the job. And you could list properties or DigsConnect's, and you could then you could see the list and just call them directly. And that was version 1, launched in Jan 2018. And I think it was just topical. There was massive tailwinds. It was a zeitgeist on campus. Everyone was talking about it. I think also because I was a student, my friends were students. You had to have a UCT email address, the access. It just felt like it was just it. It just popped off on campus. And some friends of mine were running a few Instagram meme pages for the university that were really popular, tens of thousands of followers. And they shared it. And there's a few other things that kind of fell into place. My co-founder was an SRC with me, and he's brilliant. And he was actually Uber's ambassador at the university when Uber launched in Cape Town. So it was just a lot of confluence of things that worked out really well. It all kind of started together, and it just grew insanely fast. I mean, we just took over the campus. We did ridiculous stunts also where we would throw money off a building and staple to our flyers, and it started like a riot on campus, and I got rugby tackled, and it was front page of the newspaper. So these things kind of happened. We grew super fast in 2018. Before I get carried away with the whole story, I mean, I feel let me pause there for now, but that's kind of how it all started. That was my journey with startups.
Stunts and, picking up momentum, taking over the campus. Let's talk about, one, I appreciate the education on kind of just South Africa and just how it's very different from the US. The fact that it's 2018, when I was in college in 2006, we had, websites and, things of that sort. So the discrepancy of, the technology available and how you found the opportunity and took it and ran with it. So it sounds like you picked up momentum, but when it comes to going out there, putting yourself out there to raise money. So it's one thing to get a bunch of students using a service and landlords. Why did you decide to raise money, and what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, it wasn't supposed to be a business. It literally was just a website. So I'd never even crossed my mind to monetize it. It never crossed my mind to in any way make it more than just a platform where students could go on. And it was when it started getting serious traction, we almost offered a business model. Landlords would go on and put a listing up at 8 a.m. and let's say by 4 p.m. it'll be on page 3 or 4. And they were saying, oh, geez, could I pay to be on the front page? And this was such a novel idea to me. I was like, okay, how much did you pay? And, the first time I was I give you, $50 to be on the first page. 50 Rand is less than £5, £2. It's but when you're a student, that 50 Rand goes far. That was epic. And this was terribly exciting. I mean, this is when I think the first, not to talk down, I'm sure they're very valuable, MBAs or business school, all that. But I think in that moment, I learned everything you need to know about business. It's build something of value, people then will give you money for it. And hey, presto, you've got a business. I think all of it kind of comes down to that. Just create value in the world and just keep doubling down that value. And then all that money really is a store of value. And then if you create something that's kind of, a one-to-one with that, you get paid for it. It was really a transformative moment, I suppose, looking back in life. And so
did you think about raising money at this point? What was going through when did you realize you got to do that?
Yeah, not at all, actually. I mean, so my co-founder Greg, he's definitely more entrepreneurial. He comes from a very fantastic business family. My parents are professionals, so it was never really we wouldn't sit on the table discussing business at night. We would sit on the table discussing politics, and literature. And so yeah, he was doing kind of okay, look, this could be a business. We should start monetizing this charging down to list. And we never thought about raising. We're cool, we can do it ourselves. I mean, our hosting, our service was so cheap. I think I was paying 20 Rand a month type thing for that. I could, cover it myself. I was doing the coding. We didn't have to really market because we were just on campus. So we never thought, I didn't even know what that meant to raise money. I didn't even know what is a shareholders agreement. I had no idea. I think I'd only registered the business. Like I tried to register, I didn't even know what I was doing. I picked the most random things, like choose your tax year in. I was like, what's a tax year in? I just, picked that one. So I had no idea what I was doing. The idea of raising was, I didn't even know that was a thing to be done. Look, when Greg joined, he knew a lot more about that. Like his older brother was running, a business, and he could kind of help us a lot with that. The thing what I think really inspired us to raise was often, like I said, good ideas are more of a part of a context of an environment than perhaps a person. It's similar to perhaps how calculus, was kind of discovered at the same time by two different people. Perhaps it's similar to student housing is similar, but like any great idea, it's kind of just the product of context. And the reason I'm saying that is because a few other students had started cottoning onto the same idea, being like, okay, look, there's something here around doing a student housing platform. Most of them we didn't take too seriously, but there was one startup out of Stellenbosch. And UCT and Stellenbosch University have like a famous rivalry. They're the two best universities in the country. The towns are very close to each other. And there's always been this famous sporting and academic rivalry between the two. And there was another male-female co-founder team, which also made us nervous because like we had the whole like differentiating factor, being like, oh, we're a male-female co-founding team, and there aren't a lot of female CEOs and founders in South Africa. And they came out and we're like, oh gosh, this is trouble, because they were good. And we had gone to one of their pitches in Stellies, and they'd actually mentioned DigsConnect and like listed all the ways we had been failing, how that platform was better. And I took some serious notes and went back and I was like, okay, I got to add all this in, which is great in a way, but of low-key corporate espionage. But after listening to that, I was just in a great nice serious chat, and we like, this is the line grab. It's a marketplace business. We have to have properties. Landlords, obviously come to a place like the UK or the US, and there's a lot more competition, but South Africa, it's a fairly competitive scarce market. And I don't think, convincing landlords of a new idea, but now to have, lots of startups offering the same thing, they wouldn't do it. It was a land grab. We had to move fast. We had to get to them first. We had to sweep it up and become like almost too big to be overtaken. And that would require, obviously, we need actual resources. We need to make this thing, give it a proper go. And we both come to the end of our undergrad, and we're looking at our postgrads, both being accepted. I was going to stay in the science faculty, but I was going to go to law. And we're like, okay, cool, let's have a proper run at this. Let's go into this process. And so we had then spoken to like a family friend, very much like in the network, his older brother, who had been doing, he was an accountant actually in London, and had been doing private equity in London, but also South African. And he was back in South Africa for a few months. And we sat down with him and asked him for advice. And he said, look, he's got a good network of investors in South Africa. And the VC scene, especially then, was in its infancy. There are a couple of amazing VC firms that have been around for a while. And now there's loads. There's a big Africa focus, which is incredible. But back then there weren't a lot. So it was more kind of like angel investors or family offices or people kind of in the industry. So for us, we were in property. So we started trying to, the property guys, if you do bricks and mortar, saying like, this is a new angle, or you have to like update your fund thesis to include tech applications in property. So that's actually who we went after. We just tried some of the banks, and the banks are important because they got a great network. So even though we're too small for them to invest and didn't have a VC angle back then, they knew people that were we could just chat to. And it's like that. You just got to hustle. You just got to meet people. You got to get out there. Like, it's like pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, cold emails, just like yes manning to everything, broadening the surface area of serendipity through meetings, and eventually gets in the right room. Or what happens is the right person hears and they pass it on to one of their mates, being like, this isn't for us, but you could find this interesting. And that's how it happened. We actually ended up going after pitching for, I think we started seriously in maybe like 15 November, like mid-November 2018. So about 11 months or so after we started, 11 and a half months after we started. And then we got a call about 2 weeks later from a group of angel investors in Joburg, and we were in Cape Town. So we flew to Joburg, met with them, and it was an incredible meeting. And they came back to us with an offer. And that was when everything changed. I mean, we had gone out to raise 2 million rand, which was very much in line with what founders were raising back then, like seed startups were raising in South Africa, because it wasn't pre-seed. I mean, we had like a product, it was that product. We had a product, we had some serious traction, we had like a growing brand, we had a really great team. we had a couple of landlords that were paying us every now and again for listings. It wasn't much of a business model, but like people were paying for this. There's clearly something here. And I think then, it was enough to kind of get people really excited about it, especially our growth was insane. And so we tried to investors and they came back. We asked for 2 million rand and they came back with 12 million rand offer, which was insane. I remember when we got the phone call, I was saying we had this like awful little office. It was like basically like a tin roof on stilts. It was terrible. It was like a death trap the whole year round because in summer it was so hot. I mean, Cape Town in the summer is cooking. And then in winter, it would just rain and rain, rain. And the rats, because the forest, the rats would come in and chill there. It was horrific. That's all we could afford. And we're sitting in our little like tin shack and we get a phone call. And Greg and I looked at each other and we were like, 12 million? Like, what? That is crazy. Like, that does not happen. Like, I was still living in like my own crappy little student digs, paying like, minimal in rent, and was scraping things together. And I was very like, it was so chilled. And that phone call kind of changed my life, obviously. And you don't really, I mean, I kind of knew at the time, but I didn't know as much. And in a sense, like, it was a huge check. And I don't know if I would advise, I mean, in 2024, speaking to an American or British audience, it's not a huge check. But if you're like from a hometown called Gqeberha, building a startup in 2018 in Cape Town, it was a lot. Yeah. And we were 24 at the time. And I wouldn't recommend, whatever is rated to be that size for people now. I think that no matter how wise you try to be and how informed and how thoughtful you try to be, it's hard not to fall into the common pitfalls of being a first-time founder that's given a lot of cash. You just make a lot of mistakes. Scrappiness is important. Struggling is important. Learning the hard lessons the hard way is important. It shouldn't be that easy because then you get kind of sloppy. But we said yes to the deal, and looking back, it was definitely, we got so lucky. Those investors, they're incredible. Through this whole journey, it's been 6 years, or 6.5 years, 7 years almost. They have been remarkable investors. They've been with us through like thick and thin, through the COVID years, which were very scary. They really have opened up their network. A lot of investors say, we're going to introduce you to all these people. And, years in, you haven't gotten a single introduction, or you got one half-hearted email and then like ghosted after that. They were incredible. And that is how we closed our first funding round.
So, albeit, yes, the scale is different, but in terms of relativity of experience, like you said, you're going out for 2 million rand, like that's like a normal company going out for 2 million US probably.
Yeah.
You got 6x that. Like that's pretty substantial in terms of, the relative distribution and everything. And just, context to the audience, roughly you ended up raising only about $1 million US, which sounds, not that much to a traditional, US startup who has to go out and raise like tens of millions. But when you think about relative cost of being in South Africa, and you had, can you just tell the audience, like from a talent perspective, what kind of talent were you getting? Where were you getting the talent? And ultimately, how much did it cost? I think it'd be eye-opening for founders.
This is why I advocate for everyone to build in South Africa. It is like an undiscovered gem. It's like a mecca for founders. It's incredible for like basing your team there. The time zone is obviously very essential, which is incredible. It's English speaking first language in terms of communicating to the team, in terms of hiring there, customer support, everything is just phenomenal. Of course, it's also because the cost of living is so low, like salaries are proportionately also a lot lower than what you're paying in other countries. And also it's just, you develop in our country, we need jobs there. So you're just doing a good deed for the world also. The talent's phenomenal. I think the reason why, we've got so many talented people that work, that the kind of skill set that startups need, you're looking at, if it's the whole range of software developers, everything from DevOps, front end, back end, intro set, whatever, to your marketing teams, your sales teams, your customer service teams, like all of that is in Cape Town. And the reason why people aren't leaving is because it's so beautiful. It has such an incredible quality of life that people don't want to go. So that you will find an amazing density of talent in the city. Like, I think our software developers are some of the best in the world. And I really would advocate, I think that South African entrepreneurs are some of the best in the world. I would say the most famous South African entrepreneur, the most famous entrepreneur in the world is office space South African.
Yeah.
He's busy. And even though I think he's kind of renounced his, birth country a little bit, I still learn the accent. You still kind of hear it coming through in some of the words that he says.
For the audience, we're talking about Elon Musk, from South Africa.
Exactly. And so
for this amazing talent, like, from like the low end, maybe like customer support, admin type roles to, engineers, what was that salary range that you were paying?
Gee, yeah. I mean, for you come in customer service, you're paying maybe like, and honestly, everything has a scale, but maybe like 10,000 rand a month. You're looking like for customer service. Do you want me to try put this into dollar amounts while we're going, or should I give rands? Maybe it's good to do rands because then all your listeners can go. They can go look up the rand dollar exchange rate.
So just for you're paying like 500, 600, US dollars per month for kind of customer support, which I've had staff in the Philippines, and it's usually like $2,000 a month for staff in the Philippines, which is a hot spot for customer support, and here you can get it for a fraction of that. What about engineers?
Engineers, you're looking maybe, so we would hire, after hiring these, always just to hire people that were super smart and from there and had a good vibe. And from there you can kind of learn anything. So guys who maybe we didn't want in with less than about, it's like, let's say 2 to 3 years experience. So maybe mid-level to, we're stopped being able to afford them maybe at like the 5-year mark, post it's a university, extra 5 years. So between like 2 years to 5-6 years experience. And for that, you'll probably pay maybe 60,000 rand a month. But these were like brilliant engineers. Like we'd get really good guys like out of Basti who we knew, maybe 2 years, 3 years experience and paying about 60,000 rand a month.
Yeah. And that for, everyone listening, it's about 3 to 4 grand a month for, a seasoned mid-range, mid experience level, engineer, which is, wildly inexpensive and speaks English.
What do you pay for that in the US?
US depends on what city, but you'd probably be closer to like 12 to 15 grand a month. Yeah.
No wonder these staffs have to raise so much. That's crazy.
So it's 4 or 5 times more expensive. For talent in the US. And so there's definitely an arbitrage play for founders that are building companies can be looking to South Africa for potential talent. I'm a big proponent of overseas talent. There's just so much good talent.
And also there's so much good talent. Also Cape Town music gives you an excuse to come to Cape Town to check in on your team. It's just amazing to spend the summer there. Like when I'm so appreciative and I really love Northern Europe, the US. It's incredible being able to have the access to. Very grateful to these countries for welcoming me in as a founder. An entrepreneur now as a venture capitalist. But I'm not going to lie, when it comes to, Jan and Feb, I don't want to be anywhere near the Northern Hemisphere. So being able to fly right down south to Cape Town then is just magnificent. And to have your team next, it's English speaking, it's a central time zone. I really would advocate for hiring talent there. So those are developers, sales team pay on commission, but then you're paying maybe like a salary of, depending on the level again, let's say 25,000 to 30,000 rand a month. So 30,000 rand, then maybe like a commission upside on that. Biz dev is pretty similar, I'd say. And then founder salaries.
Pretty reasonable and justifiable. You raise 12 million rand, that goes a goes a long way. For being
office space is cheap. Cape Town's probably it is the most expensive city in South Africa. I think even in Africa. Because there's a huge amount of foreign interest. And so you have obviously like a lot of people coming in from Europe and the US that are buying a lot of property there. Which is, in a sense, great for the economy. I'm glad that everyone's investing in the city, but it does make it difficult for local South Africans. But comparatively again to Europe and America, it is a lot more affordable. So your office space, your utilities. The biggest downside to building in South Africa for a long time was our load shedding. So for a long time, the state power utility, Eskom, has been blighted by quite severe corruption. And it led to many, many, many years of time blackouts. That's varied in intensity, but in the good times, it would be maybe an hour a day. In bad times, it would be 8, 10, 12 hours a day with electricity. There's a lot of people start, working around that. They'll create, had set up generators, backup power. One of the really good outcomes of that, and not the outcomes of Journey 2, which is I'm not advocating for, blackouts throughout the country. It was horrific for the economy. It was really tough to work. And there'll be times I've been watching my whole team just sitting there because their laptops had gone dead, the Wi-Fi's down, and then you just pay your money being ticked, going away with every second of the clock because my team just couldn't work, and it was incredibly frustrating. It was horrific for business. But the one plus side is that South Africa had the biggest adoption of solar panels and distributed energy generation. I mean, look at houses, everyone has solar panels installed, which is incredible. You're talking about kind of like a move to more sustainable energy. And I think that self-generation is a really good solution. Look, talking about, for the future and sustainability, instead of having one centralized power manufacturer and then distributing that across the country. So that was kind of one plus side. I also think it shows South African resilience to adversity. Like, there's no power, which in the 21st century is like insane to try to operate around that. But it's like, cool, you're going to make solutions. We're going to sit around and be like, this sucks. We did do a little bit also would sit around and say, that sucks. But also we go cracking on solutions, like, this is the new normal. What are you going to do about it? And obviously you look at it from a very high level policy point of view. How do we make sure that we kind of fix this? Why has this gone to a state where our government made this happen? But also what we're doing in the short term. And that was kind of making solutions around that. And South Africans seeing opportunities in business there, for example. Okay, everyone needs to install solar panels. People need to have backup, like energy. How do we kind of account for this right now? So, yeah, I think resilience breeds, or adversity breeds resilience. So that was the one downside.
So I think it's a good tip for founders that are looking at, recruiting talent to consider that.
Quick plug for founders looking for an edge raising capital. Companies on Thunder.vc have gone on to raise over $1 billion since joining our network. It's absolutely free. Just go to join.thunder.vc to get started. And if you leave a comment on this video down below with your company's name and the problem you're trying to solve, you'll be entered to win a free coaching session with me. Okay, that's it. Just comment down below. Now let's get back to the show.
I want to switch gears a little bit. We talked about DigsConnect. We talked about, raising money there and what that was like. You went through a very normal journey. It sounded like just, South Africa. And, but you're onto something different. So it looks like you stepped down from DigsConnect as far as the CEO role. It sounds like you're still on the board. But you have since written and launched a book, and you have launched a fund. So I would love for you to just tell me, like, what went through your head to say that my tenure is done here at DigsConnect, and that to move on to, and why you chose this other path.
Yeah. And also just to give some context to the listeners that I just came back from a run and I got my time back. So that's why I'm dressed like I'm going to, I don't know, like what do you call it, a baseball match, because it's literally just post-run Procter here. So yeah, the change, it was insane. I think I didn't realize at the time just how defining it would be, making that change. I mean, from university, I went straight out of university. I was into this wild university, launching a company. It's all I'd known. It's how to define myself. It was my identity. It was my life. It was my livelihood. It was all these things. Even my visa when I travel is generally based on it's, a tech talent visa, entrepreneurship talent visa. So it's very much everything I had known. Yeah, what led up to it? I could do a whole podcast just on that and what led to me leaving. But I think it was, again, like a confluence of events, of changing context that led to a place where I just wasn't the right CEO for the company anymore. I think where the company was going, what the board wants, what the shareholders wanted was very different to my skill set and the kind of vision that I had for the company. And it definitely, in many regards, it kind of sucked, but in other ways, it's kind of amazing. I built something that so many people cared so much about, that they believed so much in a vision that they thought was the best, and just something different from mine, and that's all right. Like my co-founder is absolutely incredible and was definitely the right person for what the company needed in the next stage of what the majority of shareholders felt was right for the company. And so it just kind of got to a point where it was time, I think.
I find it incredibly noble for founders to have that realization and to put what's in the best interest of the company. Because I've met some founders where they should do what you're doing, but they don't because their identity is so wrapped up in the organization, and they lose sight of the fact of this is to grow beyond just the founder, eventually, and it's great for the company to kind of hit that next stage when founders kind of realize like, hey, I played my role, got to this point, let's bring in the next champion for the organization. And I guess from that transition, that realization, what led you to deciding that a book was a good idea?
Well, I mean, just before I go in the book, just to say, I think that obviously the founders played the critical role in like value genesis and in building new things and in, sorry about the cough, I don't know what's going on there. Geez Louise. COVID-20, right? The founders definitely play the most, a critical role. And they definitely, I think it's important to always support founders and to back their vision. But I think humility is so important. I think founders, I definitely could get very egotistical. I think founders definitely do. I think it's such an immense privilege to have other people, if it's investors or, angel investors or institutional investors, whatever, other people who take their hard-earned money and they're willing to trust you and back your vision, to put that into your company and into what you're building. And I think that it's an immense privilege. It's an immense privilege. And it's definitely something to think deeply about in what you're the custodian of, of their investments. And when it comes to making decisions like that, to put yourself second, it's, in a sense, it is in a sense putting yourself second, but also in a sense, it's just you sticking true to your values. Your values are, I'm going to take this responsibility. You've given me this duty very seriously and know that right now I'm actually not the right CEO for this company anymore. I'm not the right person to give you, what you believe are the right returns. I think it's being true to your values and to your reputation, to know that you will only ever deliver the best value and the highest possible just the excellence of work, and knowing what excellence is and what the best path is, and very, very true to that. I think it's the best decision you can make, not only for your shareholders, but for yourself also, and the longevity of your success as an entrepreneur, as a CEO and as a founder, because life is long. In a sense, life is short and it goes bloody fast sometimes. I mean, I can't believe when I turned 30, I was like, whoa, what? I'm still 15, aren't I? Like, in my heart, like, when did this happen? But also life is long, and reputations are kind of all we have at the end of the day. And if you plan to build multiple businesses, if you want to do great things, I think that, like, knowing that you've always been true to your word, when saying to investors, I will always endeavor to excellence. And I think that's important. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to have other people trust you with that. And it's I think you should never take that. I don't ever want to take that lightly. So the change happened in that, so one of the things I spoke about, where I have some maybe time to leave, is that I struggle with focus. I love doing lots of things at once. I love context switching. And when I struggle to say no to opportunities also, which is something I'm working on. It's hard to kind of say, what adds to the bigger overarching vision and what detracts. The book was interesting because I really love writing. I think that the power of storytelling for changing the world is massive, if not the most important thing we have. I mean, obviously, in Sapiens, the whole argument that Harari makes is that everything's a story, everything from what an economy is to currency is to a country to everything, we just like make up these things, and there's like broad-based consensus that, okay, this actually exists, right? Let's like act like it does. And the next thing you know, it's like, it exists now, right? And I think that the ability to like really connect with human beings, I think we relate so deeply to stories. And so you can convince someone with like stats and with data, but I think that's conveyed in really human terms, I think is really powerful. And so I've always loved writing. I have a blog/newsletter called the Aviation Club. And when I post on socials, update my journey there for anyone. I always try to make it, almost like a narrative. I think it's more easy to engage with. I post regularly on TikTok and on Instagram and on YouTube and all those places. And I love telling the story. And I feel like every time it lands with the right person and makes them feel hopeful or excited or inspired or like, I'm going to do this thing, I launch that thing. It is the coolest, most incredibly rewarding feeling ever. And I have a folder on my phone of screenshots of messages that people have sent me saying that, oh my gosh, I heard this talk, or I read this blog post, or I read this or that, or I read your book, and it's inspired me to start this or do that, or, get involved. And it is like the coolest experience to know that like a human being's life has like been changed for the better, like, and with the ripple effects of that, I think it's absolutely remarkable. And yeah, and so the book I'd been writing for a long time, and I actually got approached with the book deal. I'd always wanted to write more seriously. I must have submitted maybe like 100 short stories, articles to like, the New Yorker, most of which just got ignored. I did get one rejection letter once, which was very exciting. So then they read my articles. I was like, progress, they've read it. Very exciting. Since then, nothing else from them, unfortunately. So I obviously kept trying. And I think with everything in life, you can't just sit around waiting for your big break. You have to like keep doing the work and, wait for that kind of to attract it by making the effort, as opposed to just waiting for manna to fall from the sky and feed you. And so I'd start this newsletter, and I was publishing like crazy. I was building up a mailing list and emailing it out and telling the story. And got approached by, they're called NB Publishers. They're the biggest publishing house, I think, in Africa. It's owned by Naspers, which is one of the biggest like media companies in the world even. Yeah, they're pretty big. They're on early best in Tencent, for example, which is definitely there.
Really? Did they? They're kind of not directly to Naspers, but they're down.
Yeah. So yeah, South African company. That's so cool. I love that. So NB Publishers is one of their companies. And they said, we love your story. It's quite interesting talking about, I think Tech Start started becoming this really like exciting thing. This was like 2021, November 2021, they approached me. It started becoming really like a hot topic in South Africa. And they like the angle, especially because I was born on the eve of South Africa's democracy. So it's like, again, this context of South Africa going into, this apartheid state, into democracy, and what they meant the Mandela years. We call the born free generation. Like almost like a new country. What does that mean? And within that, there to have this like burgeoning tech startup scene and the complexity of who I am and all that. So there's a lot of really interesting narratives there, I think. And especially when you want to read about startups, like the gold standard obviously is Y Combinator. Everyone goes on YouTube and watches those videos. Like, this is how you do it. And there's a lot of information there, like building an MVP and customers and iterating that is universal. But it's a very different market condition building in developing economies, especially in South Africa, across Africa. It's very different. And I think that talking about that and how to navigate those dynamics is interesting because it hasn't been documented a lot. And so I started writing, I gave the book deal and I said, hell yeah, without really thinking about, could I do this? Because a month before then, I'd also been, I started getting involved in government work at a national level. The president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, had appointed me to the board of the National Youth Development Agency. And I started getting really involved in governance in South Africa. I've been South Africa's delegate for things like G20, COP28, BRICS, and getting really involved there and shaping policy around youth development, especially with entrepreneurship and that kind of startup angle. So yeah, it was a lot, but I said yes to the book. And it was just 2 crazy years of my life. And then obviously moving to London, to offshore the business here because we started expanding globally. And so 2 crazy years of a lot. I was just doing everything all the time. I mean, I'd be sitting like in taxis, writing Upstart while I had like a meeting in the background and, flying off to India for G20 and, working on it was absolutely mad. A huge part of the book was written in Amsterdam. I really love the city and I was there for a while. So just everywhere. And then published that in February this year, day after my birthday. And yeah, I had book tour in May. So I stepped down as CEO in April, had book tour in May. Book was at number 8 in South Africa on the bestsellers list. So that was really exciting. Because usually the books that sell in South Africa are like about rugby, Mandela, politics, and Jesus. And I say that being, a very devout Catholic, but that's kind of what sells. So to have like a book about tech startups and have people actually reading it, I was like, hell yeah, right on. That was really exciting. And that was the book. It was an incredible journey. And I still write lots, still got my newsletter. And I definitely, when I've done enough more cool things, I'll be writing the second book. I just need more content first, which is probably the fund.
Well, with the last few minutes we have here, let's talk about your fund and how you're thinking about that, and basically what type of companies are you looking for?
So the fund, I think like everything in life, actually, in a way, I kind of not wait for the signs, but you kind of like life pushes, give you a little nudge in a way it's meant to happen. So after leaving DigsConnect and after book tour, I was kind of thinking, gosh, what do I do with my life now? Like I was thinking of doing kind of like the founder resets of just like chilling out a bit, cortisol resets, and I lasted about a week. It was so boring. Like I didn't need to get back to work. The South African general elections this year obviously been massive for democracy globally. I think 49% of the world went to the polls this year. Like it was a huge amount of people voting and change in global politics. And because I work with the government, one of the initiatives that I'd started was called 1 Million for Democracy. And the goal was to get 1 million young South Africans registered to vote who never voted before. And we ended up getting 1.6 million new young South Africans in the voters' roll, which is incredible. The one downside is not all of them showed up on actual voting day to vote. So next time we're going to get them voted, but then actually get into the polls on voting day. But that was pretty exciting. And the election happened. It was incredible results. I think incredible results for the country. And then the inauguration happened, the president's inauguration on the 18th of June. And so I had flown down to Pretoria to the Union Buildings for the inauguration, which is happening in the morning. And that afternoon, I actually had a call with the United Nations, the development program. And how that happened is during my book tour, I had been approached by someone who had come to my talk, and she said, look, I'd love to get your email address. I absolutely love what Upstart's about, and curious to understand more about tech startups in South Africa. And I was like, well, I wrote the book on it, so I'm speaking to the right person. And I got an email 2 weeks later from literally the head of the UNDP saying, hey, we're having, I want to host a strategy lab, and I'd love to hear your context on what you're doing. So it was a group of maybe like 10 of us. And it's actually the afternoon of the president's inauguration. So I'd sat there that morning, watching our democratically elected president being sworn in, which was this incredibly moving experience. And then I was supposed to go to the hotel to do the call with the UNDP. And because of the police blockade, I couldn't get out the venue. So I had to go find basically a little broom closet close to the president's office to take this call. So I'm on the call and we're chatting about very UN type situations, the biggest issues facing humanity, it's water scarcity and soil generation, agriculture and conflict, and how do we solve all these crises that are facing humanity, rising conflict in the world, and kind of linked to the UNDP Sustainable Development Goals. And they're coming from very high level, most people on the call, the 10 of us were mostly from governments, policy, public policy, NGO backgrounds. I mean, I'm kind of like this little startup in the corner. And they're coming from a very high level point of view, which is okay, look at policy, look at the global governments are involved, look at corporate maybe as business. And these are all very important aspects. But I think, looking at the biggest issues facing humanity, I think you look at attack from every angle possible. And I'd obviously have this incredible experience of startups, and I've seen, especially in Africa, how startups are a fantastic vehicle to affect really rapid solutioning to a lot of problems. And where those problems are, obviously often, with most of the cases, it's purely commercial. It should be, looking at startups. I believe in free capitalism. But when you're developing a businesses, especially in Africa, almost by default, those businesses are driving progress and are creating jobs and are developing economies and developing, the civilizations and the countries there. And so I think that if we're looking at some of the Sustainable Development Goals, looking at startups that are working on solutions, commercial solutions, so they're more sustainable than just charity, that are addressing those issues, it gets really exciting, I think. And so on the call, I was like, it could be really interesting to set up a venture, what I'm calling this a venture house. I don't know if the word's been used before. I don't know if I just coined it or not. So a venture house, which would be a venture capital fund, certainly capital allocation, resource allocation, but also a venture studio, accelerators, incubators, all these kind of terms to look about how to basically create and nurture startups to fix these problems as commercial endeavors, but focusing on the biggest issues we're facing. Because if they're on a mission to, let's say, look at water scarcity or water management or anything with agri-tech, that farmers or that people wouldn't pay for, but also does help us not only safeguard civilization, but promote some of these sustainable development goals, Like, that's a really interesting confidence. Geez, I've used the word confidence a lot today. It's definitely my word of the day. And so that was kind of where the seeds of the idea started sort of taking, sprouting a bit perhaps. And from there, it's actually quite quick, from that first idea to like, oh, I want to make this happen. Because when I started chatting to people about it, you almost have to speak an idea into existence. That's the cool thing of being a founder, is that you have an idea, you have curiosity, you have energy, and then it's just willpower. And that's how you take this like, moment into suddenly it's like real and exists out there. People are talking about it. And it's like, obviously the first thing we always do is like buy the domain, set the wiki, the LinkedIn page. You're like, okay, we're halfway there, it exists. I've done a LinkedIn post, it's real. But then other people start talking about it and they use the word, and to hear like the word of your idea like in other people's mouths, like this crazy surreal moment. You're like, it exists now. And from there to start chatting to friends about it, the most incredible people. And what's it's absolutely blown me away is just how generous everyone has been with their time and their effort and their advice, in helping me figure this out. I mean, I'd never done a business model for funds before. I didn't know how the finance worked, the economics worked. I didn't know how the legals worked. And everyone's just been like literally allocating hours over the last couple of weeks of their time to sit with me and work through it with me and introduce me to people in their network. And this is not only in South Africa, where my network is quite strong, but in the UK. I'm off to Berlin next week, and then I'm going to Amsterdam for meetings there. Definitely to head to the States, just because people, even though I've got some friends in Dallas, who are like, oh yeah, we're totally introduced you to these people. They're incredible. They're like 10x your mission. I mean, I was at an event the other day, and there was an ex-mayor of like a major African city, and he was like, oh, that sounds incredible. And, definitely chatting to the African Development Bank. Let's set it up. And I was like, oh my God, like, wow. So it was been amazing. And yeah, that's it. I mean, actually, when I say I closed my first deal, it's more of an angel check than the fund necessarily, because I think the same approach to starting the company or starting anything, you can't just sit back and, I need to break from LPs first. It's going to be a very long process setting that up and setting the structuring up and where do you establish it and all those kind of situations, but rather like, let me run it with so long. Let me start getting involved, let me start working with startups, let me start cutting angel checks. And you're kind of doing the two concurrently. Speaking about then through that, also then I found a co-founder. Potentially it looks like I found a co-founder for the fund, which is really exciting. Really narrowing down the thesis for each fund. So like fund one, what's it going to look like? Getting the new terms of that set up. So I think you have to figure it out while you're doing it, and it kind of takes shape just by sheer momentum in a way. And yeah, so this is what the vision is what I'm working on. And then after the 5, 10, 15-year horizon is to then show successive funds that work, each have like a different focus. There's in this broader narrative of this venture house, of Pharos Ventures, that are looking at solving the biggest issues facing humanity and saving the world.
Wow. And it's been a fantastic story. Just kind of hearing the journey from trying to find a place to live, to launching a fund, how to save the world. So oversimplify a very long journey. Before we part, just in 2 or 3 sentences, what would be some advice for other founders out there that you would give?
Oh, can I give 3 pieces of advice? Okay. The first piece of advice I want to say is, do not forsake your health. Like, it's not worth it. Like, it is. Anyone's going to say this to you, you're not going to listen until you have your first big burnout or until something goes wrong, and then you'll be like, But really, just like, do not forsake your health. Do not sacrifice sleep, exercise, your relationships, happiness, putting things off. Like, you want to be building for life. You want to build something absolutely massive. You can race to finish something, and you're like, you work like crazy for 10 years and then like chill. Like, chilling is boring. Like, you want to be working your whole life on like really exciting big things that do that slowly and sustainably. And I'd say my first piece of advice, you're starting at 20, you have a lot of energy, you kind of can like bully your body a bit, but like you will pay for it late in ways. The sooner you can wake up and like, okay, I actually prioritize sleep, I need to prioritize like eating good food. And I say that having literally had like half a sour chocolate for breakfast. But really like
moderate.
My first.
Moderation.
Yeah, exactly. Only half. So the other half I'm having after the meeting. That was my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is cringe maximize. Like, you should totally be cringe maximizing. Like, if people are laughing at you, you're doing the right thing. It means you're actually doing the work. You're doing the right thing. Like, there's nothing will hold you back more than your own idea of, oh my gosh, like, people are going to laugh at me, they're going to mock me. Like, you have to suck at first to eventually get better. Like, how many times did Freddie Mercury probably get on stage and he was booed off for being too eccentric or not hitting the right notes or whatever? And he's like Freddie Mercury, you know? And I watch these videos and be like, whoa. And it's just an absolute icon. But he started off being probably a total loser. Like, all of us start off by being. But that's the only way you can get better. If you're sitting around trying to be too cool and you're like, oh, like, you're not going to do anything. Like, cringe maximize. That's how you know you're on the right path. Like, should totally be like maximum embarrassment in yourself in a way. Obviously within reason, but putting yourself out there constantly, iterating constantly, like putting it out there. It's just, that's critical, I'd say. And the third thing is, I'm on the whole maxing trend right now. And I've obviously been seeing way too much on Twitter that I'm saying maxing behind everything, is destiny maxing. Like, sometimes I think the story you tell yourself about yourself is the most important thing. Like, if you start really thinking that, like, you know, you're living your destiny, you're living your calling, you're living your truth, you feel like you're seeing signs everywhere. Like, honestly, like tell yourself, like, this is actually, like, you know, the success or the vision or the actualization of what you're working towards. And you feel like you're seeing like signs to the affirmative, making this happen. And even though there's probably like a billion signs that are telling you not to do this, ignore that. Like, shut down like negativity. Like, give yourself delusional optimism, like absolute tunnel focus. Because I mean, there's a stat that I love mountaineering. I'm very much into my sport, and mountaineering is like one of my firm favorites. And there's a stat that, I don't want to say I love it because it's a bit grim, but what's interesting is that more people die on the way down from Everest than on the way up. And that's because they are so tunnel vision focused that I will get to the top of this mountain. And as some experience when I climbed Kilimanjaro, I got so sick. Like, I was horrifically ill in Kilimanjaro. But you go kind of crazy in a way. You're just like, I will get to the top of this mountain or I will die. There's no plan B. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Now staying in London, I'm like, bro, I should have just gone down, like, relax for a week, gone bed and try to get a week later. The mountain's been there for like a long time. It'll last a bit longer. But you don't, you go crazy. Like, I will get to the top or I will die. And you get to the top and you're like, okay, maybe I actually will die now because I'm exhausted. And you kind of like, meh, and you give up. And so I think the lesson in that is when you absolutely believe that is your destiny, that you're going to do this, you're going to hit like that goal, you are born for this, it's right. Everything is conspiring to help you get there. Like, everyone is amazing. The world's incredible. You're going to make it happen. I really think you start seeing it. You start believing it. And then you like, it becomes so easy to finish then. It's like when you're doing a run, you can see the finish line, even though like a K back, you're exhausted and you want to stop. Now you can see it's just another 800 meters. You will gas it way faster than you could have done before. And that same thing also, you believe you're so close, you're going to make it. And how many founders you speak to and they're like, oh God, if I knew how hard it was, I never would have started. But now I'm in it. It's too late to go back. And I think it's that, like, ignorance is almost like your best friend. Like, don't believe the haters, don't believe the negativity, be delusionally optimistic and self-confident and just go for it. And like, see the signs for your success everywhere. I mean, if anything, it makes you happier. So why the fuck not? You'll have more of a laugh. And so even all goes tits up eventually. I'll be like, look, for a while it was awesome.
No, I respect that a bunch. And it kind of reminds me back to like, the Steve Jobs reality distortion field of just like make everything warp to your perspective and drive that vision home. So
hell yeah.
Alexandria, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, sharing your story, hearing and feeling your enthusiasm, throughout the show. So it's been great. And I look forward to our audience being able to listen to this. And just for, if they want to reach out or learn more about you or, buy your book, what would be the best way to do that?
So I have a website, alexandriaprocter.com. And that has links to basically everything. I'm on literally every single social media platform. And I post regularly. I love sharing the stories. So I post a lot on Twitter or X. My Insta is private, but I generally do accept people just so I can kind of see who's on there. But everything else, I've got a blog, my YouTube channel. My book's available in South Africa and buy it in store. If it's global, it's on Amazon. So if you're in the US or Europe, you can just get it on Amazon. Kind of everywhere. I love chatting to people and engaging with people. So if you send me a DM on any of my social platforms, I'll almost definitely reply, set up a call. I love, expanding my network. if anything, I'll probably convince you to come to Cape Town, so.
Wow. Thank you so much. We'll make sure to put those links in the show notes. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you for watching today's episode. As a reminder, I'm your host, Jason Kirby. I have built and sold multiple companies with over 135 million in transactions as either a founder, operator, investor across multiple industries. I'm currently the managing director and founder of Thunder.vc, where we help companies and founders at all stages navigate what capital to raise and who to raise it from, and help improve companies' odds of raising capital. If you need help, reach out to us at help.thunder.vc. If you like today's show, please share with your friends, give us a like or a comment down below. And as a reminder, this show is published weekly. And to get notified of new episodes and our newsletter, be sure to go to our website at join.thunder.vc. And if you sign up today, I'll send you a few freebies on how to negotiate a term sheet, how to get a free list of relevant VCs, and much more. That's it. No more shameless plugs. Thank you, and see you next week.